Night settles slowly, and the space around you seems to grow quiet as well. Perhaps beyond the window, there is a dark sky, or only the soft glow of a lamp and the familiar stillness of late hours. When breathing becomes steadier and thoughts begin to drift more slowly, allow yourself to relax a little, as if sitting beside a distant current, with no need to hurry in search of answers, only to listen and let time pass gently. In this quiet pause, we will reflect together on something very vast: the fate of the universe. Not as a lecture, but as a story told slowly and closely, like the way we look up at the sky and wonder where everything will eventually go. Think of this as a still space, a small pause in the day, where science is told in a slow rhythm, and the journey is only just beginning. How the universe began. Try to imagine a moment very far away, so distant that all familiar ideas of day and night, of before and after, seem to dissolve into silence. There was no sky, no stars, no dark expanse that we are used to looking up at each evening. There was no wind, no sound, nothing at all that we could name. Only a stillness so complete that even stillness itself had nothing to be compared with. And then, within that infinite quiet, a beginning took place. Not an explosion as we often imagine, not a blinding instant like in a film. It was more like an opening than a breaking, like a dense mist slowly parting to reveal a space that was gradually coming into being. The universe did not begin with familiar shapes or colors. It began with energy, with motion, with subtle changes that, if one could have stood there to watch, might not have been noticeable at all. Everything was then too hot, too dense, like an ocean of light without shores, without directions, without distances to measure. Time itself was different from how we feel it now. There were no clocks, no familiar rhythm of a passing day. Only the very slow passage of change, like the breathing of an immense being slowly awakening. As the universe began to expand, like a lake quietly widening after a single drop touches its surface, the temperature gradually softened. This cooling did not happen in an instant, but over spans of time so vast that all the numbers we commonly use seem small by comparison. And in that gradual cooling, the first tiny particles began to form. They were too small for anyone to see, yet they became the foundation of everything that followed. These particles met, connected, separated, and connected again in simple ways, like dust drifting in a beam of afternoon sunlight, moving slowly without any hurry to go anywhere. Gradually, as the universe continued to expand, enormous clouds of matter began to take shape. They were not like the clouds we see in the sky, but so vast that light itself would need millions of years to travel from one edge to the other. Within these clouds, an invisible pull began to draw everything closer together, very slowly, very patiently, more like a gentle invitation than a force. And then, within that long gathering, the first stars were born. There were no fireworks, no sound, only light appearing, gentle yet enduring, like a flame kindled in a dark room. These stars shone in the vastness, each one a tiny point of light from afar, yet a brilliant world when seen from near. Their light began to spread, touching regions of space that had never known light before. And for the first time, the universe was no longer completely dark. Time continued to flow, so slowly that if we could have watched, it might have felt as though nothing were changing. Yet over spans of time almost impossible to imagine, stars lived, changed, and quietly came to an end. From those endings, Matter returned to space, like seeds carried away on the wind, from which new stars were born once more. In this way, a rhythm emerged. Not fast, not hurried. A rhythm of birth and fading, of light and darkness, of cycles longer than any story ever told by humankind. Stars did not exist alone. Under the influence of gravity, they gathered into vast communities, turning slowly in space. From far away, these communities looked like gentle spirals, like great winds without sound. These were galaxies. Each galaxy contained billions of stars, and each star carried its own story, its own motion, its own span of time. Yet all of them drifted together within a larger current, like leaves upon a very wide, very slow river. If we could look at the universe from a great enough distance, we would see that it is not still. It is moving, changing, gradually becoming different from what it once was. Nothing remains unchanged forever, not even the largest structures. The evolution of the universe is not like the changes we see in daily life. It is not hurried, not obvious, not easy to notice. It is like a mountain slowly worn away over millions of years, or a river quietly changing course without anyone noticing in the span of a single afternoon. And within that slow current, more complex things gradually formed. New elements were born within the hearts of stars, new structures appeared, systems of stars, planets, and worlds with their own skies, their own dawns and sunsets. In one very small place within that universe, on a planet circling an ordinary star, there came to be living beings who began to look up at the sky and wonder about the origin of everything. Those questions did not change the universe, but they gave it meaning in a very special way. For the first time, there were eyes to see it, minds to reflect upon it, and the universe continued to drift. It did not stop after the first stars appeared. It did not stop when galaxies formed. It is still expanding, still changing, still continuing its story in a rhythm so slow that nothing can hasten it or compel it forward. If we sit quietly in a dark room, listening to our own breathing, we may realize something very gentle. Motion does not always need to be seen to exist. The heart continues to beat even when we do not notice. Time continues to pass even when we do not count it. And the universe as well continues to evolve quietly in every moment, whether or not anyone is watching. The story of the universe's beginning, then, is not a single moment, but a long unfolding, a process that continues even now. What began in simplicity has gradually become rich, diverse, and filled with many forms, like a small seed becoming a vast forest, given enough time. And time, the universe has a great deal of time. When we think of this, we may sometimes feel very small, yet we may also feel a quiet peace, like standing by the sea at night, hearing the steady sound of waves, knowing that the ocean was there long before we arrived and will remain long after we are gone. The universe is like that. It began in a stillness beyond imagining, slowly formed light, stars, and galaxies drifting through space. And it continues its journey still, without hurry, without stopping. And in this very moment, as you are listening, that story is still unfolding, quietly and patiently, like a river flowing in the night, needing no witness, needing no name, simply continuing, slowly and in peace. The universe is expanding, and that current continues so quietly that if we do not pause to feel it, we might imagine that everything is still. The stars remain suspended in the sky like familiar points of light, the faint bands of galaxies still appear like thin veils of mist in the deep darkness. Yet the stillness we perceive is only a very thin surface. At a deeper rhythm, slower and almost impossible to sense by intuition, the universe is still in motion. Nothing is truly still, not even space itself. This idea did not come to humanity at once. For a long time, when the first telescopes were turned toward the sky, many believed the universe was a vast but unmoving scene, like an enormous painting hanging silently in the dark. The stars seemed fixed in place, the galaxies like distant, motionless glimmers, and this sense of permanence brought a quiet reassurance, as if everything had long rested exactly where it belonged. But then, in years when science still carried the quiet patience of careful observation, a man named Edwin Hubble spent many nights looking into that darkness, not with haste, searching for the extraordinary, but with the persistence of someone attentive to the smallest changes. He observed the light from distant galaxies, measuring subtle shifts, changes so delicate that, at a glance, no one would have noticed them. And gradually, a realization emerged, gentle as noticing that the surface of a lake is not still but slowly spreading outward. The distant galaxies appeared to be moving away from us, not because they were swimming through space, but because the space between them was stretching, like a soft fabric being drawn outward with quiet steadiness. This discovery did not immediately change the sky as people saw it. The stars still shimmered as before, the nights remained just as quiet. But in our understanding, a door had opened. The universe was not an unchanging, silent scene. It was more like a vast ocean, where all distances were slowly growing, like long, slow waves invisible to the eye. If we could stand at a point far enough away to see many galaxies at once, we would see that they are not gathering, but quietly drifting apart, each moving in its own rhythm, without haste, without chaos, simply continuing its journey in an expanding space. This expansion has no sound, no clear sign. It is like the way afternoon slowly becomes evening, the light not fading in a single moment, but softening gradually until we suddenly realize that darkness has arrived. And what is strange is that this expansion does not slow with time. On the contrary, later observations revealed that the universe seems to be expanding faster, as if something very subtle, very gentle, is quietly pushing space to widen even more. This is what people call dark energy. Not because it is frightening or ominous, but simply because we do not yet truly understand what it is. It gives off no light, cannot be seen or touched. Yet its presence is felt in the drifting of galaxies, in the ever-growing distances between distant points of light. Perhaps the simplest way to imagine it is as a breeze too faint to see, noticed only when leaves on the surface of water begin to drift apart. No one sees the breeze itself, yet the motion of the water reveals that it is there. So it is with the universe. Space continues to expand and galaxies continue to drift apart, slowly but without pause. Light from the most distant galaxies takes billions of years to reach us, and during that long journey, space itself continues to stretch, making the path of light just a little longer, and then a little longer still, as if the road ahead is always quietly receding. Thinking of this, we might imagine the universe as a vast tapestry being woven and stretched at the same time, thread by thread, distance by distance, in a movement so slow that no one could point to the moment it began or the moment it will end. And within that widening, there is a very particular feeling. Not urgency, not collapse, but a kind of release, like opening the hand and allowing what it holds to slip gently away, without resistance, without holding on. Galaxies drift apart not because they choose to leave, but because the space between them is becoming larger. And as distances grow, light between them becomes more sparse. The sky of the distant future may grow darker, quieter, like a vast room where lamps stand so far apart that their light no longer touches. These thoughts need not bring unease, for every change in the universe unfolds at a rhythm far slower than anything in human life. So slow that millions of generations may pass while the sky appears almost unchanged. What matters is not the speed of change, but the change itself. The universe is not a motionless mass. It is a current, a gentle and continuous movement. Like a deep breath we notice only when we sit very still. If we listen long enough, we may begin to feel that the expansion of the universe is not something distant and separate from our lives. It is part of the same flow of time, part of the same story we ourselves are living within, though on a vastly different scale. And when we look up at the night sky, knowing that those points of light are quietly drifting farther apart, a strange peace may arise. Not loneliness, but vastness. A vastness large enough that our smaller thoughts can dissolve, like a grain of salt falling into the sea. The universe continues to expand, moment by moment, in rhythms so slow, and no one knows with certainty what lies ahead. As distances between galaxies grow greater still, as light must cross ever wider spaces, the question of the universe's future, then, does not arrive as something urgent that must be answered at once. It comes gently, like a passing thought when we look down a long road and wonder where it leads, even knowing we will never walk its full length. And for now, while everything continues to drift, while space continues to open in almost perfect silence, we may simply sit quietly, breathe in slowly, breathe out softly, and allow the thought of an expanding universe to pass through the mind, like a thin cloud crossing the night sky, without haste, without destination, simply drifting into the deeper quiet ahead. The fate of the stars. And in that deeper quiet, as the thought of a universe slowly expanding drifts by like a thin veil of mist, we may begin to notice another rhythm, slower still, stretching across spans of time so vast that imagination itself must move gently to follow it. It is the rhythm of the stars. From a distance, stars appear almost unchanging. Their light is steady and gentle, repeating night after night like a familiar whisper. Yet within that steadiness lies a long journey, beginning in cold, diffuse clouds of matter drifting silently through space. In those dark regions, there are sometimes places where matter gathers very slowly, like dust in the air gradually settling. An unseen pull draws particles together, little by little, with the patience of time itself. There is no sound, no urgency, only a quiet gathering that unfolds across stretches of time that, to human life, would feel almost endless. Then at some moment within that stillness, a star is born. Light appears, faint at first, then gradually steady, spreading outward like warmth moving through a cool room. And a new point of light is added to the sky. Stars live for a very long time. So long that all human stories, civilizations, and memories would be only brief moments beside the lifetime of a star. They burn slowly, transforming matter within their cores, giving off light with the steadiness of a deep breath, unhurried and unbroken. If one could observe a galaxy across billions of years in a single glance, one would see stars appearing, shining, and slowly fading, like small flames in a long night, flickering into life, then going dark, while new flames are kindled elsewhere. In this way, a galaxy sustains its light, not because any one star lasts forever, but because new stars are continually born from the remaining clouds of matter. It is a slow and enduring cycle, stretching across immense ages. But the universe continues to expand. Galaxies drift farther apart, and within each galaxy, matter is gradually used to form stars. The clouds of gas that once gave rise to new light grow thinner with time, like a forest where seeds become scarce after countless seasons. This change does not happen suddenly. There is no single moment when the sky abruptly darkens. Instead, very slowly, over spans of time so long that no one could witness them fully, the number of newly formed stars begins to diminish. And then, at some distant point in the far future, an era will arrive when the last stars are born. There will be no clear sign to mark it. One star will form, and then another. And then the silence between the births of new light will grow longer, until no new stars appear at all. The stars that already exist will continue to shine, living out their long lives. But the sky of that time will hold no newly kindled lights. Only older stars will remain, burning slowly, quietly, approaching their natural ends. If one could look at a galaxy from afar in that era, its light would seem to soften, not because of any great event, but because each small point of brightness would fade in turn, like lamps in a city gradually going dark when the night grows late and people have fallen asleep. A galaxy would dim, not in a single moment, but in a process so extended that even the word slow would hardly be enough to describe it. Light would grow more sparse, the darkness between stars would widen, and the sky within the galaxy would become deeper, quieter. There would be no one there to feel that change, no eyes to witness the last stars gently fading. Yet this does not make the process sorrowful. It is simply part of a greater rhythm, one the universe has carried within itself since its earliest days. Everything is born, endures, and then dissolves, giving way to other states, other forms of matter and energy. Even light has its own journey, and that journey does not last forever. When we think about spans of time so immense, we may sometimes feel how small everything seems. But there is another feeling as well, gentler, like sitting by the sea and watching waves come and go, knowing the ocean does not need to hold any single wave in order to remain what it is. So it is with the universe. Stars come and go, but the current continues. And in the far future, when the last stars have faded, the sky will grow darker than any sky we have ever known. Not a frightening darkness, but a deep and quiet one, like closing one's eyes in a perfectly still room where there is no light, yet nothing disturbs the rest. That darkness will not be entirely empty. The remnants of stars, the structures that remain, will still drift through space, slowly, like pebbles resting on the bed of a river that has ceased to flow. Time will continue, but it will no longer be marked by the light of new stars. If one could see a galaxy in that distant age, it might appear like a faint whirl in the dark, its remaining points of light scattered and dim, like the last embers in a fire long cooled. Yet even that image does not carry a sense of absolute ending. It is simply another state of the universe, a slower, deeper rhythm, where motion still exists, though no longer illuminated. And in thinking of this, one may feel a quiet peace. For everything in the universe, from the largest stars to the smallest grains of dust, follows its own natural rhythm, without haste, without resistance, like the rhythm of one's own breathing now. Slow, steady, arriving and passing, without needing to think about a beginning or an end. The universe continues to drift. Galaxies continue to move quietly apart. Stars continue to live their long lives. And somewhere in the distant future, light will grow more sparse, darkness will deepen, and stillness will widen even further. And all of this unfolds not in chaos, but in a profound calm, like a windless night when everything seems at rest, while the current of the universe continues to flow gently without stopping into an even deeper silence ahead. The era of black holes. And as the light of the stars grows more sparse, as galaxies become quieter and the dark spaces between points of light widen, the universe enters a rhythm slower still, deeper still, as if time itself were breathing more gently. In that stillness, there remain entities that endure, things that do not shine like stars, do not reflect light like planets, but quietly exist in the deep darkness. These are black holes. They are not the violent abysses that human imagination often paints. From very far away, a black hole is no different from a quiet darkness, a region that emits no light, makes no sound, and reveals its presence only through an almost complete silence. Yet within that silence lies a powerful pull, a drawing inward toward the center so strong that even light cannot return. Black holes are born from the deaths of very large stars, from endings that occurred in ages when the universe was still radiant. And as the stars gradually fade, the black holes remain, like heavy stones resting on the floor of an ocean whose waves have long grown calm. They endure for an extraordinarily long time. So long that, by comparison, the lifetimes of stars, already vast beyond familiar measures, are like a passing breeze beside the patience of black holes. They do not burn or consume themselves as stars do. They simply remain, drifting with the motion of their galaxies. And as galaxies themselves slowly disperse over time, black holes continue drifting through an even wider expanse of space. If one could observe the universe in the far future, when most stars have faded, black holes would become the most prominent structures remaining, even though they emit no light. The universe then would resemble a night ocean, where only deeper darkness drifts within a vast dark background. And in that stillness, something very subtle continues to unfold, so slowly that it is almost impossible to notice. Black holes, though they may seem unchanging, are not entirely still in time. There is a process, extremely gentle and slow, that humanity once contemplated and gradually came to understand. At the edge of a black hole, at the boundary where inside and outside can scarcely be distinguished, there are tiny fluctuations of energy. These fluctuations are not loud, not explosive, but like the finest ripples on the surface of perfectly still water. Over an immense span of time, so long that even millions or billions of years become small by comparison, those ripples carry away a minute amount of energy, so small that, observed over any short period, no change could be seen. But the time of the universe is not short. It is patient, enduring, and never hurried. And so, very slowly, almost imperceptibly, a black hole begins to lose its energy. Not like a flame going out, not like an object breaking apart, but like a great block of ice slowly evaporating in a cool room, little by little. too slowly for the eye to notice, yet steadily unfolding. This process has been called Hawking radiation, though the name matters less than the feeling it evokes. Even the things that seem most eternal are changing, only at a rhythm far deeper than anything we are accustomed to knowing. A large black hole may endure longer than any star, longer than any galaxy, longer than spans of time the human mind can easily grasp. Yet nothing is completely unchanging. In the absolute stillness of distant space, black holes too are passing through their own journeys, very slowly, very gently, like a breath drawn across eternity. If one could wait long enough, one day, far in the future, black holes would gradually grow smaller, their energy slowly dissolving into the surrounding space, until at last they would no longer remain. There would be no sound, no great flash, only a gentle fading away, like mist dissolving in the morning light. And when the last black holes have evaporated, the universe would enter a state even quieter still. No stars, no great structures, only sparse particles of matter and faint traces of energy drifting through an immense expanse. Yet even this vision carries no frightening emptiness. It is like a wide field at night, with no lamps, no sounds, only open space and a quiet so deep that the quiet itself becomes gentle. When thinking of spans of time so vast, one may realize that the universe does not move according to fast or slow in the way humans perceive. It has its own rhythm, immense and patient, in which trillions of years are only the lightest of transitions. And in this very moment, as we sit quietly, as breathing remains steady, as the space around us is still, all of this is unfolding somewhere within the endless flow of time. Black holes still exist, still very slowly, losing tiny traces of their energy, like immense hourglasses in which each grain of sand takes millions of years to fall. Nothing stands still. Even the quietest entities in the universe are drifting, changing, passing through their own journeys. And in thinking of this, one may feel a deep calm, like hearing a very soft wind at night, knowing that everything is moving, yet nothing needs to hurry. The universe continues to flow through eras of light, through eras of darkness, through ages in which even black holes are only long moments in a current far longer still. And that current continues, quietly, patiently, moving toward still deeper silences ahead. The heat, death of the universe. And when the last black holes have gradually dissolved into the vastness, when the remnants of earlier ages have become so sparse that almost nothing remains to distinguish them from the darkness, the universe enters a state quieter still, deeper still, as if time itself were slowing to the point of nearly ceasing to move. In that stillness, matter continues to exist, but no longer gathers into great structures, no longer forms the fires of stars, no longer creates radiant regions of light. Everything becomes more diffuse, spread across immense space, like a very thin mist slowly dispersing in an enormous room, until it is almost impossible to see. The temperature of the universe continues to fall as well, very slowly, very evenly, with no single moment marking the change. Only, little by little, energy spreads, disperses, and no longer gathers in places where light or distinct motion can arise. There is a simple way to sense this, like placing a drop of ink into a glass of clear water. At first, the color is deep and distinct, but with time it spreads, growing fainter until the entire glass holds only a very light, uniform shade, with no darker or lighter regions remaining. Energy in the universe is much the same, spreading out, becoming evenly distributed, no longer concentrated enough anywhere to create new things. This spreading is called entropy, yet the name matters less than the feeling it suggests. It is the natural tendency of all things, a kind of release, a gradual unfolding, like warmth in a room slowly spreading until no place is warmer than another and no flow of heat remains. In such a universe, energy has not disappeared. It is still there, but spread too evenly, too thinly, with no differences left to create motion, to produce light, to kindle new flames. Like a field covered in cold dew, where no wind is strong enough to stir the grass. And so, over time, the universe becomes colder, darker, more diffuse. Not in a single moment, but through a process extending across spans of time so vast that even the largest numbers ever imagined by human minds seem too small to describe them. Light, if it still exists, would be faint and rare, drifting across expanses that are almost empty. Particles of matter would lie separated by enormous distances, and encounters between them would become so rare as to be almost non-existent. A universe without events, only stillness. This stillness would not resemble the silence of a room at night, where there is still the faint sound of wind or the breathing of someone asleep. It would be a deeper stillness, where no clear changes remain, no cycles of birth and fading, no flames kindled and extinguished. Time would still exist, yet there would be nothing left to mark its passing. No dawn or sunset, no orbits of stars, no slow rotations of galaxies in the dark. Only a vast expanse, cold, quiet, and immense. If one could stand within such a universe, the sensation might resemble drifting in an infinite ocean, where the water is perfectly calm, without waves, without ripples, without any motion to distinguish before from after. And yet, even that image is only an approximation, because in such a reality there would be no observer, no sensation, no memory, only existence itself, silent and enduring. And strangely, when thinking of such a vision, one need not feel sadness or emptiness. For this is not an ending in the way humans often imagine endings. It is not an abrupt stopping, not a loss. It is simply another state, another rhythm of the universe, where all motion has slowed until it nearly dissolves into stillness, like a piece of music that does not end with a high note, but with a very soft tone, sustained, fading gradually until nothing more can be heard, and the silence that follows feels whole and gentle. The universe, in that vision, is like a symphony that has passed through all its melodies, and now only the final silence remains, deep and wide. When thinking of this, one may feel more clearly the rhythm of one's own breathing in this moment, the warmth of the air, the presence of light, small things, yet precious, which a universe still full of energy continues to offer. For now, the universe has not yet entered that stillness. Stars are still shining, galaxies are still drifting, and in one very small corner of space, there are beings still sitting quietly, listening and reflecting on all of this. And the flow of time continues, unhurried, unceasing, carrying everything through vast ages, through light and darkness, through motions gradually slowing, until one distant day when the universe becomes colder, darker, and quieter than any sleep. But right now, in this quiet moment, the story is still unfolding, and the current of thought continues to drift, gently, like a very soft breeze passing over a still lake, leaving small ripples that fade and allowing the silence to return, deeper and softer within the immense stillness of the universe. Other hypotheses about the end. And within that vast stillness, as the thought of a universe gradually cooling and spreading through space lingers like a thin mist, a very gentle feeling begins to appear that the future does not necessarily have only a single path. The universe, like a great river, may flow in many directions, depending on deep currents beneath the surface that we have only begun to understand in the smallest measure. When human beings look up at the sky and reflect on the distant ages ahead, they do not imagine only one outcome, but many possibilities, each like a story told in the dim light of a lamp, slowly and quietly. There is one image, very old and very calm, in which the universe, after expanding for a long span of time, one day begins to slow, to pause, and then to reverse, not as a violent collapse, but as a movement so gradual that its beginning would be almost impossible to notice, like the tide withdrawing and then returning, recognized only after many hours have passed. In that vision, galaxies that once drifted apart across long ages would begin, quietly, to draw nearer again. The distances between them would slowly shrink, steadily and gently, like leaves on the surface of a lake drifting closer when the wind changes direction. The light of the sky in such an era might grow denser, not because new stars are being born, but because the distances between all things are becoming smaller. The temperature of the universe would also rise little by little, very slowly, like warmth returning to a room after a window has been closed. And if that current were to continue long enough, the entire universe might gradually contract, becoming denser and hotter, until everything drew close together in a state very different, very unfamiliar to anything we know today. This image was once given a simple name, a great contraction, like an inhalation following an exhalation that had lasted billions of years. But there are also other reflections, other stories quietly considered among those who observe the sky. One possibility is that the expansion of the universe not only continues, but accelerates over time, like a river that begins to flow and then suddenly reaches a long descent, causing the water to move faster and faster. In that vision, the distances between galaxies would not only grow, but grow ever more rapidly. Clusters of stars would slowly separate, then star systems, then the planets that circle their stars. And in a future so distant that it is almost beyond imagination, even the smallest structures might no longer remain bound together, not because of an explosion or sudden event, but simply because the space between all things is expanding faster than any force can hold them together. A complete letting go, very slow for most of its course, then gradually more apparent as distances become too great. This vision has been given a name that sounds powerful, yet in its essence, when viewed with a quiet mind, it is only an expansion carried to its furthest extent, like a fabric stretched wider and wider, until even the threads drift apart. And there is yet another idea, softer, more abstract, like a story in a work of science fiction told in a very gentle voice. This idea suggests that space itself, at its deepest level, may not be entirely fixed, that the state in which the universe now exists may resemble a very calm, very still lake, yet not the lowest state that could be possible. And somewhere, within the smallest fluctuations, a new region might appear, where the laws are slightly different, like a raindrop falling onto a quiet lake, sending ripples outward. If such a region were to appear, it might spread very rapidly, changing the structure of space as it passed. But this need not be imagined as something frightening. It is closer to the change of water becoming ice, or vapor condensing into dew. A change of state, natural, without intention or emotion. And what matters most is that all these possibilities remain only paths that human thought has imagined by looking at what the universe is doing today. No one knows with certainty which path the universe will follow, or whether there are other paths we have not yet imagined. Reflecting on these possibilities does not have to bring confusion. On the contrary, it may bring a gentle feeling, like looking at the night sky and realizing that it is vast enough for many answers to exist together within a single great silence. The universe does not hurry to choose an ending. It continues to flow, moment by moment, in a very slow rhythm. And these different futures remain only faint outlines on the horizon of time, like standing on a shore at night, looking out across the dark ocean, not knowing whether the next wave will be large or small, whether it will come closer or fade farther away. And yet, still feeling peaceful while listening to the quiet sound of water touching the shore. And perhaps what matters is not knowing exactly what will happen in those distant ages. What matters more is sensing that the universe is a story still unfolding, a current not yet finished, a journey whose final chapters still lie beyond our sight. In this moment, while everything is still flowing, while stars still shine somewhere in space, while one's own breathing remains steady and calm, the future of the universe is only a thin mist in the distance. Gentle, quiet, and still opening, like a long road fading into the soft light of a sunset that is in no hurry to disappear. Time on the cosmic scale. And as the thoughts of many possible futures settle, like small ripples fading on the surface of a quiet lake, another feeling begins to appear. A sense of time. Not the time we measure with clocks, but time on a far greater scale, where all familiar measures seem too small to hold it. In everyday life, time is felt through things close to us. A morning passes in gentle sunlight, an afternoon moves slowly, an evening grows quiet as sounds fade. A year may pass in what feels like a blink, and a human life, whether long or short, can still be told in memories, in seasons of rain and sun, in faces and moments that feel very real and near. A lifetime, from the inside, is vast enough to learn, to love, to change. But beside the age of the earth, a lifetime becomes like a very soft breath. The earth has existed for so long that mountain ranges have risen and worn away. Oceans have changed shape, and countless forms of life have appeared and disappeared in layers, like faint traces on an old painting. Forests have turned to stone. Deserts were once seas, and the sky has changed many times before there were eyes to look up and wonder. If one could stand still and watch the earth for hundreds of millions of years, continents would drift slowly like clouds, oceans would open and close, and life would quietly adapt to each small shift in climate and light. Everything would happen so slowly that within a single day, or even a century, nothing would seem to change at all. And yet the earth, ancient as it is only a small chapter in the story of the universe. The universe has existed far longer, so long that light from distant galaxies has needed billions of years to reach the place where we now stand. When that light began its journey, the earth had not yet formed, the sun had not yet begun to shine, and everything familiar to us was still only dust drifting in space. When we think about spans of time like these, the imagination often slows, as if trying to walk through a space too wide to cross. Billions of years no longer feel like numbers. but like distant horizons in mist, visible yet impossible to reach. And if we extend this view even farther, toward the ages the universe will pass through in the future, those spans are longer still. Stars will live and fade, galaxies will change their shapes, vast structures will dissolve, and all of this will unfold across intervals so immense that even the idea of a long time becomes too small to describe them. At some point, looking at such scales, we may begin to realize that time on the cosmic scale no longer resembles the time we know. It is no longer a stream measured in days or years. It becomes more like a shoreless ocean without a clear beginning or end, only continuation. In such an ocean, the ideas of before and after grow faint. Epochs of billions of years may be like small waves on a boundless surface. And when all change unfolds so slowly that it is almost impossible to perceive, time itself seems to dissolve into stillness. If there were no stars to rise and set, no orbits to mark cycles, no rhythms to compare, how would time be felt? Perhaps then time would no longer be a flowing current, but simply a presence, a vast stillness that does not need to be counted. This need not feel unfamiliar. Even in daily life, there are moments when time seems to vanish. When we sit quietly in a silent room, when we listen to a steady sound, when we close our eyes and feel only the rhythm of our breathing. There are moments when past and future fall away, leaving only presence. On the scale of the universe, perhaps there are presences like these, but lasting for ages beyond imagination. And looking back, we can see a gentle but profound contrast. A human life, brief yet filled with vivid moments. A planet, ancient, changing slowly. A universe, immense, where time stretches until it almost loses meaning in the way we understand it. Yet all these layers of time exist together, nested within one another, like circles spreading across water, each ring a different size, yet all moving outward from the same center. And somewhere within those circles, there is this moment. The moment in which you are listening, breathing, simply being. When we think of that, a quiet feeling may arise, that even in a universe vast beyond imagination, small moments can still be complete, like a single candle in a dark room, not needing to burn forever to have meaning. The universe may pass through ages longer than anything we can imagine. But in this moment, time does not need to be long or short. It only needs to move. Slowly, steadily, like a gentle breath in a quiet night. And the current of thought continues, quietly like a river flowing through a wide plain, unhurried, without a stopping point. Carrying questions that need no answers, thoughts that need no ending, drifting farther into the deeper stillness of the universe and of the mind itself. Humanity in that vast picture. And as the current of thought about time begins to settle, like the surface of water after the last ripples fade, a very gentle idea begins to appear. That within all this vastness, within epochs that stretch almost without limit, there is still something very small, yet very remarkable, that exists. That is us. Seen from the distance of galaxies, human beings are almost impossible to perceive. A small planet orbiting an ordinary star, lying near the edge of a galaxy that is itself not especially large. And on that planet, living beings whose lives last only a brief moment compared with the rhythm of the universe. A human life, beside the age of the Earth, is already short. Beside the age of the universe, it is almost like a blink not yet completed. And beside the ages that the universe will still pass through, It is like a tiny flash of light, appearing and fading within a vast darkness. And yet, within that small flash of light, there is something extraordinary. Human beings do not only exist, human beings are aware that they exist. Perhaps this is among the rarest things in the entire vast universe. Stars burn for billions of years without knowing that they shine. Galaxies turn slowly through long ages without knowing that they move. Even the greatest structures, the longest processes, unfold in silence, without awareness, without thought, without memory. And then, in a very small place, within a very brief span of time, matter arranged itself in such a way that it could look back upon itself. It could ask questions. It could listen. It could sit quietly at night and reflect on distant stars. This does not make humanity greater than the universe, but it gives human presence a depth of meaning, like a small lamp in a vast room, needing not to illuminate everything, but simply to be there. When we look up at the night sky, something very gentle happens. Light from the stars has traveled across space for millions or billions of years to reach our eyes. And in the moment that light touches the retina, a very long journey ends, and a moment of awareness begins. Light, in a sense, becomes known to exist through the awareness of a mind. The universe may be cold and immense, yet for a brief moment, it is known that it exists through us. This thought does not need to be spoken in grand words. It only needs to be felt very quietly, like noticing the warmth of one's own hand on a cold night, or becoming aware of one's heartbeat in silence. To understand the universe, then, is not only a matter of measuring or calculating. It is also a way of listening, of feeling that we are part of this vast story, not separate from it, not standing outside it, but already within its flow. Every atom in our bodies once existed in the heart of a star long before the earth was formed. Every breath is an exchange with air that has passed through long cycles of this planet. And every thought, every question, is part of a process through which the universe gradually becomes aware of itself, little by little, through small and quiet minds. It may be that, within the vastness of space, places where life and awareness arise are very rare. It may be that the moments in which the universe is seen, felt, and reflected upon occur only in very small corners, during very brief intervals of time. But rarity does not mean meaninglessness. Sometimes the rarest things are the most precious, like a flower blooming in a desert, or a drop of water resting in the palm of a hand at noon. When we think of this, a deep sense of calm may arise. That one does not need to live forever to have meaning. One does not need to be immense to have value. It is enough to be present, to be aware, to live fully within the moment one is given. The universe does not need us in order to continue. Galaxies will still drift, stars will still burn and fade, and time will still open into new ages. Yet the presence of a mind that can listen, that can look up at the sky and wonder, gives this story another depth, another layer of meaning, very gentle, very subtle. Like a piece of music that can exist even if no one hears it, yet becomes more vivid, more complete when someone listens. And in this moment, as you are listening to these words, as the mind grows quieter, as the breath becomes more even, you too are part of that awareness. A very small part, but a very real one. There is no need to understand everything about the universe. No need to find answers to every question. It is enough to sit quietly, to feel your own presence in this space, in this time, and to let the thought of a vast universe pass through the mind like a gentle breeze. Because within that vastness, awareness itself, this very moment of presence, is already something remarkable. And the current of thought continues to flow, slowly and softly, like a quiet river passing through a wide plain, carrying with it the light of distant stars, carrying questions that need no answers, and carrying a deep sense of peace. That within an infinite universe, there is a small moment in which life is listening, breathing, and knowing that it is here. Closing, eternal stillness. And as all thoughts begin to slow, as the images of distant ages also begin to dissolve into a deeper quiet, we may imagine the sky gradually darkening, not in a single moment, but very slowly, very gently, like a soft light dimming late in the night. Points of light grow fewer, the dark spaces become wider, and then there remains only a quiet expanse, deep and calm like the surface of a lake when no ripples remain. There is nothing that needs to hurry in such a scene, nothing that must happen next. There is only stillness, spreading wide and even, like a long breath that has just been fully released. Everything has passed through its own journey. Stars were born from thin clouds in space, shone across immense stretches of time, and then gradually grew quiet. Galaxies drifted across enormous distances, silent as boats upon a shoreless ocean. And then all of it, little by little, returns to quietness, to be born, to exist, and then to fade. That rhythm does not belong only to stars or galaxies. It is also present in the most familiar things. A day begins and then ends. A breeze passes and then becomes still. A breath moves in and then out naturally, without effort. And when seen in this way, fading is no longer something to fear. It is simply part of the flow, like nightfall. Not to take away the light, but to allow everything to rest. The universe, after long ages of light and motion, also gradually becomes quiet in this way. Not empty, but still. Not lost, but returned. If one could stand within such a vastness, the feeling might be like drifting in a very deep sleep, where scattered thoughts no longer arise, where no small sound disturbs, where only a wide and gentle peace remains. And in this moment, as you are listening, you may also feel a very small part of that stillness, in the slowing of the breath, in the body gently releasing tension, in the mind drifting lightly, without needing to hold on to any thought. There is no need to imagine anything more. No need to go any farther. Simply remain here, in this quiet, and let the current of time pass very slowly. Everything is born, exists, and then fades. And this is not something to fear. It is simply natural. And then, like a long night reaching its deepest stillness, in the infinite quiet, the universe rests.